There's a great deal of anger out there. The Mercosur deal obviously is not working for the Irish people. It's not going to be a benefit to the agricultural community. But it's a betrayal of what the European Economic Community was initially set up to do, was to ensure food security and to ensure that the production of food would be protected. Now, what's going to happen with Mercosur is the direct reversal of that. It's a sellout. Economic Community was set up to provide cheap food from France and Italy to enable the industrial might of Germany to progress. That was the engine of growth. And that's now being finally sold out. And the German industrialists want to get access to for their car markets to South America, and as a result of that, they're essentially throwing the agricultural industry under a bus. We have no idea of the nature of the food that is going to be imported. Without a doubt, it'll have a huge impact on internal food security within Europe. And in the wake of the last war, there were so many parts of Europe that were close to starvation. And it was seen as absolutely necessary that there be food security. There be a system that ensured that food was produced viably, the farmers could have a living. And that was the whole engine. That's what started the Economic Community. That's the final betrayal of its initial founding. Now it's gone in all kinds of dreadful directions since then. It's become essentially a totalitarian, anti-democratic super-state. But its founding principle, that of food for industry, is now finally being betrayed.
We always said, the EU was about Germany and Germany's interests, ultimately, first and foremost. And that in a certain sense, that's what it was all about. And everything else was a way of serving that ultimately. And here we have the classic example of it. But there's a targeting of agriculture generally in the world, that there's a desire as a long-term downstream plan for Ireland is essentially as a nature park, and that the farmers will be dispossessed of their land or, compensated with fake money or whatever, paper money, which will be flushable the next day. If you have a country with the best beef in the world and then you flood it with the vastly inferior product, after years and years of banging into people's heads this idea about sustainability and environmentalism.
We're now importing beef from halfway around the world.
Yeah, which is not subject to the same rules and regulations as our farmers are.
Agriculture is under attack. That means our population is under attack. Because if you don't have food security, that's going to hit sooner or later. And that was one of the bases which the original European economic cooperation was established, was to ensure food security.
Yes.
And that's now gone. And you are closing farms down and they won't open again. You're going to lose the skills. People won't be able to produce food. If this goes on for a long time and more farmers leave the business, you lose your skills, you lose your ability to feed yourself.
We have 4 days of food. There's a fragility about this whole thing that you can't mess around in this way with a country which has depended on agriculture for generations and still does to a high degree.
Is this part of the war against population? Is it part of the depopulation agenda? You and I are both aware of the frightening results of what happened during COVID, how it was enacted. Is there a much longer term agenda there? Certainly many of the medical people I speak to are concerned that the long-term impact of the vaccines, we haven't seen it yet in excess deaths, but that is going to accelerate very dramatically and that the real impacts will be seen 5 to 7 years after the initial rollout. We may see that in the very near future. I hope to God that I'm wrong there.
For a long time, farmers talked about their own vested interests solely. Now, they're actually not. This is an existential crisis that could be facing the entire country, the entire people of Ireland.
It's difficult to get through to farmers that the European Union is actually a threat to them now. It has been the check in the post for so long. They have been very, and it's always been framed in the idea, well, it's either, if Ireland leaves the European Union, we'll be left in serious trouble. I've moved away from that position because the European Union will never let us leave. They'll destroy us if we try to leave. We will seek to disband the European Union because it has become an utterly destructive force. It's not democratic. It is the one that is promoting an unnecessary war in Eastern Europe. Why has it gone from being a peace project to being a war project?
It's utterly totalitarian, isn't it?
Yes. Inevitably, when you have people leading the continent, Ursula von der Leyen, Kaja Kallas, these crazy, crazy people, who are never elected, who never have to face an electorate, they're not responsible for their decisions, and their decision-making becomes seriously defective. Now, Viktor Orban recognises this. He has said, look, I'm not leaving the European Union, because if these people keep going for long more, this crazy leadership will collapse the whole thing.
But Michael, I don't even think that von der Leyen is leading. I think she's just reading scripts. These decisions are being made at an entirely different level, which has no democratic dimension whatsoever.
But when you don't have answerability, when you don't have politicians who are required to answer to an electorate and answer for what they've done, you're going to get very seriously defective decision-making that doesn't represent the people, and that's where we are.
Do you think the farming community is now beginning to understand the bigger picture? Because I found that when I ran for election for the European Parliament last year, not particularly surprised, but actually, vindicated in certain suspicions that I had, and discovering that any ambitions I might have had to raise broader issues in the campaign were absolutely kaput, because the whole thing is so stage managed.
Yes.
You know, you have a public debate about farming. They want to talk about the cap. That's it. If you steer away from the cap to talk about totalitarianism,
Long-term food security.
yeah, or the attacks on farming, the clear attempt to eradicate farming in Europe, you're immediately closed down. I was looking at the audiences over the heads of the police officers who were policing my speech, and thinking, a lot of these people do know, but they don't have a mechanism to actually talk about it.
That's right, and you know, when you go to a debate, I found the same thing. People want to get you on specifics. If you try to take the bird eye view, oh no, that's all very well, Mr. Leahy, but what about this grant? What about that grant? Fianna Fáil will give me a tax write-off of my kids' university fees. What can you do for me? I would say, well, look, you know, they've stolen the money from you in the first place. They're only giving you back your own money, so why are you so happy with
and this is the thinking that has got us into this hole in the first place.
Is.
Forget all that, you know, how much money are you going to put into the pockets of farmers?
Yes. Nevertheless, I do think there is a realisation. People are waking up, and maybe this deal will make them wake up.
This is the feeling I have today, Michael, just driving in and seeing all these tractors and seeing all these people. 20,000 I hear now is the number they're mentioning.
Great turnout.
This is something that might actually have an effect where other forms of protest haven't had an effect. The government and the authorities, without authority, seem to be able to manage all other kinds of dissent. But farmers are different for some reason, aren't they?
They're better organised, always have been. You go back to the days of Parnell, it was a rural organisational group. That's what got that politics going. There's traces of that. That's still very much alive in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And they're bloody good to organise an event like this, you know. I mean, I see that in our party, if we try to organise something, it's very, very difficult to do. But the professionalism that they've got here, and the government does listen to them, you know. They know the farmers' vote is extremely important. So if they take a more political approach with a large P rather than a small p, you know, the farmers could be an agent for change. Now, I think if this deal goes through and the impacts kick in, you're going to have a lot of very, very angry people out there, and you know, and they have the potential to maybe do something. Let's hope so. You know, let's hope so.
This year, Michael, it could be a crucial year in many, many ways. I mean, you can already see there's a kind of there's a series of new laws being mooted now which are all about silencing.
They shelved the hate speech laws temporarily because they couldn't get away with it, but it'll come in a different form.
Yes.
And that whole the attacks on X now and this grok thing, it's all about silencing. It's not about what they claim it's about, protecting kids. It's about silencing X, which they see as a real threat because it's the only free speech platform there.
Yes.
You know?
This could be the year when they push with the CBDCs, the UBI, the social credit and that. And if they do, this is the year when we will know in short order what our chances of surviving as a nation are and as a people.
And as a people, And the other thing that you may see this year, you might see the final rupture between the United States and Europe. And Ireland has always managed to straddle the two of them. Now, it's going to have a fairly serious choice to make, you know. Now, Donald Trump, I think it's clear he wants to get away from Europe. He sees it as a totalitarian Marxist state. He's probably got more in common with Russia, you know, than he does with a lot of the European states. You can see the impatience there. Where do we stand on that? Because there's still a great deal of goodwill from Americans for Ireland. And Ireland is the periphery of this Western Hemisphere that Trump was talking about. And do we have a role to play in that? But we may well have a very serious choice to make.
In Ireland, people don't even get to the issues about Trump. It's just Trump.
Yes, the orange man badge. Yes.
Yeah, you can walk into a room full of people and make a joke about Trump and expect everybody to laugh. And I'm quite shocked why are you not laughing? Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you very much, John. Lovely to see you. You're looking well. Delighted to be a fan of yours on Substack. We'll keep the fight going anyway for the time being.
Well, we have to. And wait to see what breaks, because we don't know. The people running this could be super efficient, super omniscient, super omnipotent. Then again, they might not.
Yeah.